Daytona, turn 4. There was a bump in the pavement over the tunnel into and out of the infield. That was one part of the equation, but then also there was a guardrail and wall to the inside of turn 4 that jutted out at a crazy angle. The two factors combined to create havoc time after time, year after year. But we had never seen anything quite like the 1984 edition of Speed Weeks. First up, Ricky Rudd, 1984 Busch Clash.
Well, you should have seen that wreck from my side. I don't remember a lot about it. It knocked me out. I remember everything about it. I remember, getting tapped in the back bumper, skidding backwards, and getting ready to hit the inside wall. At that time, that wall wasn't designed correctly, and it was going to be a pretty major hit. I would have been hitting it very similar to what Elliott Sadler hit up at Pocono. It would be almost a head-on type blow backwards.
Yeah.
So the car took off, got airborne. That was back before the roof flaps and before the restrictor plates. So it was shaping up to be a big ride, and I went way up in the air. I remember that. Came down. First time it hit, it knocked me out. I don't remember the rest of it. But I was sore there for a while.
Ricky had essentially traded rides with Dale Earnhardt during the offseason. Dale left Bud Moore Engineering to join Richard Childress Racing, with Ricky going from RCR to Bud's.
It could have happened at the worst time, really. I sort of felt like I'd worked my whole career up to that point, even going back to the go-karting days to get to the chance to drive for Bud Moore. And here we are starting this season with Bud Moore in '84, and it looks like I might have a wreck that could take me out of the driver's seat for quite a while I was healing. And that was the biggest fight, was trying to overcome the pain and not letting it get to me so I could start the season.
Of course, Ricky overcame the injuries he sustained in the Daytona mishap to win 2 weeks later at Richmond. Asked by reporter Steve Wade how he was coping, Ricky joked, "What am I doing for pain? Cocaine. A couple lines a day." Rudd's accident took place on Sunday, February 11th. 4 days later, during his 125-mile qualifying race, Randy LaJoie was involved in a melee eerily similar to Ricky Rudd's. Thanks to a rookie meeting earlier that week, the instant he began to slide sideways coming off turn 4, Randy prepared himself for what was about to happen as best he could.
Luckily, before we got to go on the racetrack, down there and testing and stuff, they had these rookie meetings. Well, you had Dave Marcus, you had Richard Petty, you had Dick Beatty from NASCAR, and they say, hey, guys, they says, if you get in trouble here, it's going to happen quick. He says, and you're going to slide. I remember Richard saying, hey, there's two kinds of accidents here. One, you're going to hit something hard quickly, or you're going to slide and hit something hard because as fast as you're going.
Yeah.
He goes, if you can remember, he says, to pull the belts tight and take a deep breath right before you think you're going to hit.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
So, okay, so, I mean, that was etched in your mind for every day in these rookie meetings. Turn it left, lock it down. Turn it left, lock it down. Don't try to save it so you go up across the racetrack. Just turn it left. Most of the time it works out.
Here's how the accident began to unfold.
I come up on Sterling Marlin. He was in the Hesco, number 17, Roger Hamby car.
Yeah.
I come up on him going into 3, sucked up to him coming out of 4. And I said, okay, I'm going to just pass him. So I turned left, hit the bump at the tunnel, and it just turned the car sideways.
Yeah.
So when it turned the car sideways, I said, okay, turn it left and lock it down. Well, by the time I did that, I was already in the grass. And it seemed like that thing picked up 50 mile an hour. So I was like, okay. And like Richard said, you're going to slide a long ways before you hit something. And when you hit it, it's going to be hard.
Here's the craziest part of Randy LaJoie's story. He knew he was about to wreck. He had time to think about it. Talk about somebody's life flashing before their eyes in a moment of peril. This was it.
I remember like it was yesterday. So I'm sitting watching where I'm going to hit. And I was like, okay, this is okay. So I'm locked up. My dad always taught me never let go of the steering wheel. So I gripped on the steering wheel. I pulled my belts tight.
While you're sliding?
Oh, yeah. I pulled the belts tight, grabbed the wheel, and I'm watching. And all of a sudden, the fence is gone, and I'm seeing sky. And I was like, out the windshield. I was like, oh, boy. And I look down, and I see the grass. And I said, I think I need to take a deep breath. And I took a deep breath, and I woke up probably 4 hours later. I started to remember about 4 hours later in the hospital.
Randy spent the night in the hospital and made it back to the track on Saturday.
And I was walking down pit road, and a fireman, all dressed up, he goes, "You know who I am?" I said, "No, I don't, sir." He goes, "Well," he said, "I helped you get out of the car." He goes, "Well, we took you out of the car, we laid you on a stretcher." He goes, and those guys didn't know what to do because you weren't breathing. I said, "Really?" I said, "So?"
Holy cow.
He said, "Well, my open face helmet,
Yeah.
the radio thing," he says, "your radio thing was stuck against your cheek. It was in your mouth." He goes, "So I opened your mouth to pull your radio." He goes, and I look, he goes, "Hell, so you got a bunch of stuff in your mouth." Well, he says, "I reached in and pulled a clump of grass and dirt."
Out of your mouth.
He says, "About the size of a softball." He says, "I pulled it out of your, he says, you started moving your legs, you opened your eyes." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." So I guess I vapor locked when I took a deep breath. I sucked all the grass in. So I tell people that's the reason I ended up to be the way I am, is because, I had a little vapor lock in there. I'm not sure how long, but so I was like, "Okay, thank you."
To this day, Randy has the helmet he was wearing during his Daytona turnover on display in his office. Plainly visible on the back is a grisly gash. He had been that close to what very likely could have been a mortal injury.
There's a reason I'm here, because, that was probably a couple inches away from, cutting my damn neck, So, okay, it wasn't my time.
On Friday of that week, there was a consolation race for teams that had failed to qualify for Sunday's Daytona 500. Natz Peters spun off the corner, hit the inside wall, and slingshotted back onto the track. He was pounded by Jim Hurlbert, who sustained first and second degree burns on his face and left arm, facial lacerations, broken teeth, broken jaw, and a severely fractured right ankle. And Natz, his mama had bought him a brand new driving suit for Daytona, and she took it to her ladies' Bible study group to be prayed over. Natz was wearing that suit in the accident, and even though his bubble goggles melted to his face, the suit wasn't so much as even singed. It didn't even smell like smoke. My name is Rick Houston, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode from the Scene Vault. Please give us a like and hit the subscribe button.